It was the summer between my sophomore year of high school and junior year of high school. And during that period of time, I loved dressing up as David Bowie and just going around the town. So I dressed up in sort of an Aladdin Sane Ziggy Stardust hybrid costume. I used this temporary hair dye in this bright pink color. And then the next day, I left the dye in my hair. And so the next day, I went to take a bath and I was going to wash the dye out of my hair. And so since I took a bath rather than a shower, which even as I was doing it, I was like, Kat Bond, you should take a shower. And then I was like, shut up. And I took a bath. And while I was in the bath, obviously the pink hair dye all came out into the water in the bath. So at first I didn't think much of it, but then it became more and more saturated, and all of a sudden I'm just lying in this bath that's bright pink. And I remember thinking, because the water was pink, that in order to actually wash my hair out, I needed to wash it under the faucet. So I remember leaning down underneath the faucet in this big round bathtub and sort of like getting the conditioner out of my hair. And then I remember sort of lacing my fingers through the water and watching the water spill through. And I had this thought in my mind, oh, it's like I'm in a pool of blood. I was kind of freaking myself out a bit. And so at first I thought that I was just sort of on edge, a little bit anxious because of whatever I'm thinking about swimming in a pool of my own blood. But all of a sudden my right hand starts to go numb. And so I can't feel it at all. And I don't think too much of it. I'm like shaking it off, sort of like feeling it, trying to figure out what's going on. And then I think that maybe it's getting better because I'm feeling more sensation in it. But then I realize that my left hand is actually going numb instead. And so that weird feeling has shifted over. And then all of a sudden it starts to branch out and my whole left arm is numb. I drain the bathtub, get out of the bath, and I'm standing there in a towel looking in the mirror and thinking, what's going on? And then just as my left arm starts to feel better, all of a sudden my right arm, my whole right arm, all the way up to my shoulder is numb. And not only that, my whole right side becomes numb, my leg, everything, basically from the neck down, completely numb. And I have a long history of allergies. I'm allergic to a lot of things, and I have a lot of food allergies. And it was the closest thing that I could liken this experience to. So I assumed that maybe I was allergic to something, maybe the red hair dye. And I've submerged myself in red hair dye. So I'm like, great, good call there. And so I'm assuming that I'm allergic. So I run to the medicine cabinet. Well, I don't run. I hop and then pull one side of my body that is limp to the medicine cabinet and get out some Benadryl. So I take 2 tablets of Benadryl, and my mom comes home. So I go downstairs. She's in the kitchen putting away groceries. I go downstairs to tell her what's going on. And as I open my mouth to tell her, I realize that the whole right side of my mouth is numb. And so I can't fully speak. And I'm telling her I think I'm allergic. I'm having this reaction to this pink hair dye that I had when I was doing this David Bowie thing. And now we need to go to the hospital. She continues putting away the groceries. I'm pretty sure I'm dying. So I'm like, Mother, what are you doing with the groceries? This is the end of my life. But I live, and the sensation just keeps traveling through my body. Just different parts of it are numb at different points. And so then finally my mom recognizes that I'm like babbling through numb lips about how I can't feel my body. She decides, yes, we should go to the hospital. So as we're getting in the car to go to the hospital, I effectively shut my right hand in the door because I couldn't feel it. But I couldn't feel it, so that's the plus side. So it wasn't until maybe 10 minutes later when the feeling came back in that arm that I even knew that it really hurt. But I remember as I shut it in the door saying to my mom, at least we're on our way to the hospital, right? And she just sort of looks at me like, and then just starts speeding off to the hospital. I remember talking to my mom and telling her what was going on before she came home. And then I look over at her while she's driving, and she just looks at me horrified. And I look at her and I realize that when I was talking about what had happened previously, we were in a completely different part of town, on a different street than when I looked at her. And I realized that maybe 5 minutes has gone by and I have no memory of what has happened during that time whatsoever. And so I look at her and I'm like, am I making any sense? And she is holding back tears. So I take that as a no, I'm not making any sense. So I remember sitting there feeling like I was losing my mind. I couldn't remember anything. And normally I'm a very verbal person, and I basically couldn't remember any words to say except for the word fuck. So I just sat in the waiting room over in the corner just saying fuck over and over again, because I figured that if I could hold on to that word, I wouldn't completely lose my mind and myself. So there's this 16-year-old girl just sitting in an ER in the corner just being like, fuck, fuck, fuck. Not agitated or upset, just like enjoying the word. And then I forgot that word, and then I was fucked. They put me in a wheelchair and took me to triage. And when we got to triage, they were asking me questions. I couldn't speak. I couldn't remember any words. My tongue was numb. My lips were numb. I look up, there's an eye chart. I can't read it. I know it's an eye chart, but none of the letters look familiar to me at all. So I basically lost my ability to read words, which was horrifying. And so then they're asking me questions about what I was doing earlier in the day, and all I can do is be like, I can't read. I can't read that. And that was weird enough, I guess, that they just skipped triage and took me back. I had this whole battery of tests done, and I remember laying there in the bed, and I remember waking up, and my mom and dad were there, and I just knew I was going to die. And so I remember crying, and I don't know if I told them that I loved them. That was my intention. But I've forgotten all words and can't speak at this point, so maybe it didn't play out that way. But I remember laying there and wanting to tell my parents that I loved them, because I figured that that was it. That was the end of my life. And I was just sort of coming in and out of consciousness. Not really that I was passing out, but that this numbness was sort of in my brain too, that I was kind of coming in and out. Ultimately, the scariest part of the whole experience is not that I thought I was going to die, but that they couldn't diagnose it. They don't know what it was. They, through all those tests, had no idea. And so it could happen again. My doctor, who was a lovely Indian woman, kept telling me that it was a complicated migraine. And I was like, oh, it sounds so cool when you say it, but I don't want them. So you take them back. But had it been a complicated migraine, I probably would have gotten one again, and I haven't. I was given a migraine medicine. I never had to take it because I never had any of the same symptoms again. Ultimately, it could be anything. So it could happen again. So that's that.